Wherever you are, if you're watching this on live stream. Good morning US and good morning Nashville. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about how an industry initiative wants to take a new direction on unlocking trapped value in our industry. And to start with, and we just heard from Axis, there's about 50 billion devices next year. I had a little bit different number, 25 billion today. IoT devices, I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, it doesn't really matter. But this number of IoT devices will triple probably in the next 5 or 6 years. That's a huge amount. Let's take it a little bit closer to home. Let's look at network cameras. Around 100 million or so were shipped last year. The estimation is that they drove on an annual basis a data volume of around 2,500 petabytes. That's a huge, huge volume. This is what this industry is about. We drive a lot of data. We own a lot of data between all the projects that we're doing, but what do we do with it? What do we do with that data? Well, if you picture this amount of sand here on the beach and you think that is the data, that is the 2,500 petabytes that we drive on an annual basis, what do we really use in terms of information that we get out of this data? Well, I would argue this is probably what we build out of that, yeah? A little sandcastle, a little bit of information that we get out of that. And I would say probably some of the forerunners are here in the room. That's why you're here. You're interested in learning about new and exciting developments and new innovations. But if you look at the industry as a whole, we don't do a lot with this data. Wouldn't it be great if we can build a sandcastle, a sculpture like this, and use a lot more of the data that we generate today and build something like this? Data is the new oil. We heard a lot about that yesterday also. I believe there is a lot of value that we can get out of the data that we sit on today, and if we don't do it, someone else will do it. So it's important that we really unleash that data with all the help of all the tools that we heard about already this morning, but also yesterday. So this is what the Open Security and Safety Alliance is set out to do, is how can we create more value out of this data that we sit on today, that we have, and create a better future for all of us, but especially for all the customers and end users out there, because that's what we do it for. My name is Johan Jubega. I'm the president of the Alliance, and later on, Peter Jelinski from the ZAST will join me on stage, or actually will exchange me on stage and take it a little bit further. Let's first look at some of the market challenges. We see, as I already said, an ever-increasing number of connected devices. This is really, really rapidly increasing. Second of all, there is no one-size-fits-all. We see different sensors taking part all the time. We also see that, of course, with all the SoCs that are being released, there is also no shortage of sensors that we can put in the market. Quad cores, GPUs, we talked about it yesterday, neural network accelerators, a lot is possible. And if you combine those two, you have a skyrocketing amount of data at your disposal. Yeah, think about the beach of sand, a huge amount of data that we can tap into and that we can create value out of. However, today we still use very limited amount of that data that we have available to us. We still focus on capturing evidence, protecting people, protecting property, very important, but there is so much more we can do in this market and create innovation and drive value. With all of these sensors that we have out in the market, these sensors become more and more intelligent. They can watch a direction people go, they can watch what kind of people are walking there. So it enriches the data that we have, and that is great. Yeah? It creates value out of the data. But with that, we also get a lot of crooks and criminals that are interested in this data. So we need to protect that. And I was also very glad to hear about Copenhagen letter yesterday. And of course, we already see legislation popping out. GDPR in Europe. We have the California Consumer Privacy Act, which already was passed in 2018. But we as an industry shouldn't wait for legislation. We should take a proactive course there, like Milestone talked about yesterday with the Copenhagen letter. And of course, there is friction in this market. A lot of talk about friction today, yesterday. Why is there a lot of friction? This is a fragmented market. And we have a lot of common challenges in this market, but we have also a lot of proprietary implementations dealing with that. That doesn't help this market to create value out of the data that we see lying around. So that drove us to an idea, the idea that an ecosystem that can create and support a platform business model. Moving from a pipeline business, we're on where you can see, we're still very much in a push market. Innovation is determined by the gatekeepers. Who are the gatekeepers here? Well, it's all of us. It's SoC providers, it's camera manufacturers, it's sensor providers, it's distributors, system integrators. Some are very innovative, some are not. And we need to get those gatekeepers, at least the ones that are stopping innovation, out of our system, because often we still have proprietary solutions today, and we need to get to a more open mindset. That's why we need to move into this world of platforms. Demand-driven, open, truly open, so accessible for all of the market ecosystem players. We need to have some form of ecosystem orchestration. Why? Only then can we maximize the value for all the market participants with only one goal, to create value for the end users and for the users of our system. And that way it becomes a frictionless way of operating. In the book of Jeffrey Parker, he mentioned the example of how Craigslist was beaten by Airbnb. And Craigslist, at some point, if you did a transaction, you had to go off-platform. With Airbnb, you didn't have to go off-platform. You could book the room, you didn't have to have a separate rental agreement, you could pay for it, and basically that was it. That was the end of Craigslist, or at least the successfulness of Craigslist and the success of Airbnb. They took it really to the end and created this whole frictionless system. And then ultimately we need to bring curation into the market, because you want to keep the bad guys out, or you want to kick them out, and you want to have some kind of filtering and matching to make sure that the successful players will become even more successful, because they benefit also this whole market and the value creation in our market. So that idea brought us to the Open Security and Safety Alliance and our goals. What are the goals? First of all, and we heard a lot about this already this morning also, it's creating trust, or it's maintaining trust. Our industry is about trust. I can only repeat it once more, it's very important. But at the same time, we sit on a lot of data and we sit on a lot of value that we haven't uncovered yet. So fueling innovation to create new commercial opportunities is important. It's not about redistribution of the revenue we have in the market. It's about enlarging the pie for all of us, creating more value for the end users, and we all as an industry will get better out of that. How do we do that? We do that by driving the creation and the promotion of a framework and a common platform. What do I mean with common platform? Sorry, let's get some water here. What do we mean with a common platform? To create a common operating system and a common IoT framework. Because if we can create and define a common operating system for all of us and a common IoT platform, call it an app store, that would help this industry tremendously. Second, what we want to do is work together on data privacy and data security type of implementation. So really work together as an industry on enhancing the level of security and data privacy. And third, to work on enhanced levels of performance. So if you buy any OSSA certified product in the future, you can rely on the fact that it has a minimum level of security or data privacy performance. If we could do that, and those are the goals of the Alliance, wouldn't that be great? So we got together with quite a few organizations over the last 18 months discussing this. And we said, is there an interest in the market to set out to do something like that? And we had a very positive response to that. So we first of all said, okay, what do we need to focus on? Well, ultimately, and I mentioned this already, it's about the users and customers in this market. It's all about them. So who do we want to have in Alliance to serve these users and customers? Is it SoC providers? Is it camera manufacturers? Well, actually, it's the whole ecosystem that we need here. It's the whole ecosystem, because only then can we serve the users and customers in the best way. So that's where actually the 5 founding members came together, and I'm very proud to say Milestone is one of those founding members. And in the meantime, from launching at GSX end of September, 5 months ago, we're in the meantime more than 20 members. And these members already today, on a day-by-day basis, week-by-week basis, are defining the operating system, the IoT platform, on ways how to tackle data security, data privacy. We've had 2 all-committee meetings in Munich, in Taipei. We have lots of conference calls every week, every other week, working together on defining where we want this industry to go, to unleash, let's say, the data that we have and to turn that into information and creating value for this industry. So again, we invite the industry to unlock the trap potential. Yes, a lot of times we're focused today around capturing, storing, viewing data. We do that with a means to secure people and property. But we're only scratching the surface. Yes, we have some innovation going on. We saw great examples yesterday and today downstairs, especially if it comes to retail, transportation. We see great innovations taking place, but in our view, it's still only scratching the surface. There are so many other industries out there where we can unleash potential and make progress. So that's what we're set out to do. We really would like to bring this industry together, to enlarge the pie for all of us by using and adopting a platform model. And that's what this open alliance, again, is set out to do. Now, that's nice. I hear you say, you've been together in a couple of meetings, you sit together on the phone regularly, that's nice, but before you've defined a specification and then built something, that will take a long time. Well, we're in a unique position here. We've got one of our key members present in the room today who said, well, if you define the operating system, the IoT platform, we actually see a business opportunity in exploiting this IoT platform. We see a great opportunity to build the operating system as it is being defined. And when we do that, then basically we make that available to all the members of this alliance. And that's where I would like to introduce Peter Jelinski from SAST, who are basically already building the operating system as I've just talked about. Peter, if I can hand over to you.
Stand between the 2 X's and not go beyond the white line, or else I'll be shot. But nevertheless, it's really nice to be here. Thank you, Johan. And one of the things that I wanted to say with regard to the, well, we call it the OSSA Alliance. Often it's referred to as OSSA. But in any case, I think everybody has kind of a perception about standards organizations because they tend to think that these are people who continue to get together, talk, debate, and then finally come up with a standard within 2 years, and their profession is actually creating standards. Well, these are not standards bodies, or let's say standard sub-bodies, but these are actually manufacturers, these are actually software developers, these are actually integrators. And if you look at this 20-odd list of OSSA members today, 9 of them that you see on there are camera manufacturers, and 4 of them are SoCs. And we have queued up already more camera manufacturers who want to come into this, which are coming in for the simple reason that they are all experiencing pain with regard to fragmentation within the security industry, closed platforms, which are really limiting innovation today. And everybody forgets about the poor application developer who would love to have cameras that were on a standard where they basically could only write the application once and they could port the thing over across platforms and not have to worry about, oh, gee, which API do I use this time? So Johan started to take you on a little journey. I'd like to accompany you on that journey in terms of what we're doing with an open platform, how far we've gotten, and what's in store for you, and I hope you find it kind of interesting. So this is, as was referred to by Johan, this is the ecosystem of, let's say, current OSSA members today, and they are busy with setting out standards, et cetera. But the reality is that the rubber meets the road when you get to the platform. And there is a platform. And actually, since last summer, the OSSA members and SAST have been working closely together. Why? I mean, we spend our day developing, and now we got to worry about a standards body. Yeah, but this is great. I mean, it's not that difficult, actually, to go about taking a standard operating system out of open source, like we happen to do, which is Android-based, and then start to make this compatible with certain types of cameras that have a certain type of SoC. The problem is that you can build whatever you want, but then you never really know whether the market needs it, whether the priorities that the market needs are actually in there. And basically, what we have is we have a captive audience. We are also an OSSA member. So we are working and collaborating closely on the platform, and in particular around the operating system with OSSA, where we are pretty sure, coming out of the camera manufacturers as one particular source, that the order in which we are building things and the way that we are doing our feature and function product roadmap, using these guys as the soundboard for priorities, is a great package. I mean, it's a fantastic package. So we just didn't go into a closet and say, let's pull all these open source libraries off the shelf and then let's start building a common operating system that everybody could use. This is actually being driven by the security industry. So we find it fabulous that we're all working together. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the components a little bit, but maybe a little introduction about SAST. SAST is a wholly owned company founded by Robert Bosch, and it was founded by Bosch in order to be able to accelerate, let's call it, I lost my train of thought for a second. I know what it is in German, I just don't know what it is in English, but to accelerate innovation within the platform IoT business. And this was exactly why it was started. It's headquartered in Munich, in Germany. We have more than 100 developers and AI specialists working on the platform today, which are located in Germany, the Netherlands, and the United States. So it's a very, very, very much of a global team. And what I'd like to do now is basically take you through the components of what the platform actually looks like. But I don't have very much time, so I won't belabor this. So don't worry. We're not going to go down into the really high-tech level. So the first thing is with regard to the camera OS and the infrastructure, and I'll tell you what we mean by infrastructure in a second. So it is based on Android. The platform OS is basically AOSP. However, when you take AOSP, it's generally been written for mobile devices. So a lot of the stuff we had to rip out and had to replace it by what you need to do in order to have the operating system support camera devices. And that's exactly what we've done. And the infrastructure was very important because camera manufacturers need to have the ability to have a quick start then. And the quick start is called a camera manufacturing portal, which we set up. So they come in, they learn how to build the reference camera, what the SoC is. We have emulators for them. So we made very fast progress in terms of starting to get the camera manufacturers on board so that they could start to develop prototypes within the beginning of this first quarter, which has already begun. The next thing we did was we built an integrator portal so that those of you who don't have VMS systems but are integrators and want to be able to manage your clients and your devices can do that out of the integrator portal, and you have a direct link into the application store so that you basically can download different applications out of the App Store, which I'm going to talk about in a second, onto the devices that are in your particular configuration. The next thing, very important topic, is around the application developer. So the infrastructure that we developed for the application developers were basically tool chains to allow them to be able to quickly write their applications, test their applications to make sure that they conform to a certain specification so that when they're finally loaded up onto the App Store, they actually work in progress. So the app developers also have an app developer portal, which we set up for them with all the documentation, emulation, and the ability to be able to use the operating system. And the last component within this particular platform configuration is an application store. And if that kind of sounds familiar, it is basically a similar model to what Android has done with mobile phones. So mobile phones is basically independent of the mobile phone hardware, and at the same time, there is an application store that you can download applications, and irrespective of what hardware you have for your phone, you're able to run that. And that's a similar paradigm for cameras, security cameras in the security and safety industry. So one of the questions that might be on your mind is, why did we select Android? Well, we selected Android because we wanted to make an open platform to allow people to have less friction in terms of what they do. And that's not only true about the operating system, but it's also true about these other components as well. So it's extremely important. Also, they have a huge developer community. It turns out that the road to go from developing applications for IoT devices, particularly if they are relatively sophisticated, to being able to develop an application for a camera platform is not that big a step. And we found that out when we ran hackathons at the end of last year in terms of how quickly app developers were able to actually write apps in Android and also port existing apps. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. So it's one thing to work with camera manufacturers in terms of coming up onto an Android-based operating system. But by the time they're ready with their production and they start to roll them out on the market, you can't be twiddling your thumbs and suddenly say, gee, what about applications? Why don't we get the application people on board? We're doing that now because we're trying to collect up as many applications as we can, sophisticated AI applications out of various industry sectors, so that when the camera manufacturers are ready to go, we have the sufficient number of apps there as well, and very innovative apps in order to support what they're doing to make this a very interesting value proposition. So we are running also customer pilots, and the customer pilots are focused on 3 industries today, which are transportation, retail, and airports. And that's not really surprising given the fact that cameras are today being used not only for surveillance and for safety, but they're also being used for retail analytics. And airports, as you know, are very much involved in the retail business today. But the main reason that we are doing these pilots is we want customer feedback in terms of their expectations and in terms of what we're providing. We are working with retail analytics firms in order to be able to supply those. 1 second, please. And we also want their trust in our technology. So this is a reason why we are doing it. And then secondly, as I mentioned, we are running hackathons. We ran one already. And here you see some of the reactions of the app developers that came in. And it turns out that we were really delighted that being able to write applications on our Android-based operating system, and even though we are not at product release stage yet, we do have a minimal viability product which allows you to be able to build apps to know whether or not this is also viable for the app developers. And for us, the app developers and the applications are everything because that's the road to innovation. And because of the closed systems today and the poor application guys who build an app for one particular platform, but then it's difficult to migrate it over, our expectation is that they're going to have more time to focus on innovation when we start to release out the operating system and the platform. So I wanted to show you a combined roadmap between both OSSA and between SAST in terms of the things that we are doing today in order to be able to develop this stuff very quickly. And we are moving extremely quickly together. As I mentioned, the first release of the product came out at the end of last year. We are continuing to do pilots, hackathons, as I mentioned. We are attending industry-related security events. And we are planning a launch at ISC West, where we will have multiple cameras running applications. And the actual main launch will be the beginning of 2020, mainly because the camera manufacturers need to be able to get into production in the second half of 2019. So I hope you found that interesting. I certainly enjoyed relating the story to you, and we're extremely excited about it. And if you guys are interested in OSSA or want to talk about SAST, we're here as well, so please come by and talk to us. Thank you very much for your attention.